The complaint of the depressed individual that nothing is possible can only occur in a society that thinks nothing is impossible. Byung-Chul Han. In this video, we're going to talk about why AI can become hellish when we're overwhelmed by the infinite possibility landscape that it offers. And so, at its core, we live in this achievement society and think that this is progress. But what I'm going to talk about here is that we're still in the dark ages. We're surrounded by a million tools that promise infinite potential, yet the common experience that we feel is that we feel paralyzed and more nihilistic than ever. The problem isn't the technology itself, but the cultural context that we live in and our relationship to potential. Byung-Chul Han calls this the violence of positivity in her book, The Burnout Society. And she introduces this revolutionary concept, the violence of positivity, which essentially says that unlike traditional forms of oppression, this new form of violence does not, as she says, quote, does not deprive, it saturates. It does not exclude anything, but it exhausts. It's exhausting, right? And AI is the epitome, it's the ultimate expression of this positivity. It's this crazy boom of potential that's not limiting us in any way. Rather, it's overwhelming us with endless options, endless potential paths, and it's creating overwhelm. And if it's not creating it, it's amplifying the overwhelm and confusion that already existed. You see, Han argues that we've transitioned from what was once a disciplinary society, where there was rules, you were disciplined to follow those rules, and there was cultural codes and norms that if you didn't follow, you were ostracized from, to now we live in an achievement society that where the old paradigms was about following rules, the new paradigm is about constant self-optimization, which can be a hell in and of itself. And AI is the ultimate optimization tool. But as Han describes, optimization without purpose leads to what she calls auto-exploitation. We become both the exploiter and the exploited. We're endlessly generating content ideas or iterations, but we never understand why. Han talks about how the depressed individual in our current society is unable to measure up. They feel tired of having to become authentic and become themselves. That depression is the sickness of a society that suffers from an excess of positivity. So I was recently at this company, and it was like hustle culture meets startup culture meets excess positivity. It's like let's get to work, let's do it let's make tighter timelines, work harder, and get paid the same. And there was just this sense of there was this like oppression of excess positivity. The positivity and the idea that we could do anything became so oppressive because it's like constantly making it feel like whatever we were doing was not enough. And this is kind of the core idea here, that it's not the work itself, but the constant pressure to maximize potential that creates this psychological strain, this inner conflict within ourselves. And so Han talks about how we have this contemplative deficit. She warns about our loss of deep contemplative attention, which I think is it's a very serious thing. Right? There's that quote, that saying that goes, the vast majority of society's problems stem from man's inability to sit by himself alone in a room. I think this is exactly it. Our AI-driven world replaces this profound reflection and introspection with what Han calls hyperattention. This rash change of focus between different tasks, different sources of information, different system, different tools. And so, as Han talks about it, we're not lacking information. We're not lacking potential options. We're lacking the ability to sit with, understand, and meaningfully direct that potential within us. And so, as a kind of summation of this video, I want to go into some, practical philosophical guidance. So, at the core of it, the solution isn't to reject AI, but to reimagine our relationship with potential itself. We need to recognize that the feeling, the idea, the perspective that nothing is impossible, that you can do anything in this life, that's actually a deeply oppressive feeling. It can be a curse. It's a blessing in disguise, or rather a curse in disguise. The way to counteract this is to cultivate this deep, contemplative, introspective attention where we're getting curious about our inner landscape. We're getting curious about what are the lessons that I'm learning, what are the things I feel aligned with, what are the things I don't feel aligned with. And we're understanding that true creativity, that the creative process emerges out of constraint, not infinite possibility. That when we constrain our infinite potential landscape down, what we're left with is a one core idea, and within that container, that context of that one idea, we have so much creative life force that can emerge. But if we sit in this infinite possibility space where anything is possible, it just deadens our creativity. And the last thing to do is to see and to understand that AI is an amplifying force, not the source of meaning in our lives. Right? When we understand this, we can see that if we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed by AI, it's because our fundamental perspectives and predispositions are that of anxiety. If we're feeling apathetic, then it's like we have these depressive tendencies. Or if we're feeling like stressed, maybe we have excitatory tendencies, right? And so at the end of the day, the kind of primary lesson here, or the primary idea that I'm trying to convey to you, is that before you use AI, figure out what it is that is going on internally. Introspect. Sit with yourself. And through sitting with yourself and getting curious about yourself, you will begin to get clarity on what it is that motivates you, what it is that excites you, what it is that you want to devote your life to. And in doing so, you will get to a place where then you can use AI to amplify that thing that you discovered through the introspection process. But it can't go the other way around. Unless, of course, you use AI as a tool for introspection, which I would suggest is powerful. But I would suggest start with introspection without AI before you try to do introspection with AI. So I hope you found this video interesting. I surely have been in a space of I've been burnt out too many times. I felt this violence of positivity. I never truly had words for it in the past until now, until reading Byung-Chul Han's book, the Burnout Society, and I started to see myself in those words, and I started to see the ways in which I was falling prey to this idea that I could be anything and I could do anything, not realizing that in and of itself was a very constraining force.